Hi, this is Gary Block, and welcome back to, well, you see it, your Little Falls scene. A little bit of a history. We're doing rebroadcast of programs we did for a number of years. Back a number of years ago, about 2007, there were 4 guys here in Little Falls who got together at the local bakery and they discussed Little Falls. And the thought was, let's get these guys together. Gary Block will moderate it. And we sat down in the studio and we had some fun talking about Little Falls because these guys were a big part of the history of Little Falls. We had 4 gentlemen. We had Hub Zivoloski, Bodie Larson, and 2 brothers, Les and Russ Sod. And it was such a joy doing this program with them. We can't let this program just go away. It's a bit of history about Little Falls, and we had so many people who filled in over the years. We talked about Hennepin Paper. We talked about where I was at for many years, the local radio station. We talked about just baseball, anything that pertained to Little Falls, we talked about it. We had fun with it. And we're rebroadcasting some of those old programs. And thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy them here on Great River TV.
Play.
Welcome to the Little Falls scene. I'm Gary Block, and with us today, Hub Zivoloski. How are you, Hub?
I'm fine. I had some eye surgery since the last time we were there, and I can see you now. And I think I'll put the shades on again. Maybe it was better not to see you. Start with an insult, huh?
Yes.
Les Sod is back with us. Lester, welcome back. Good to have you here.
Ask about his health, too.
Yeah.
Because we're all crippled here today.
And of course, Hub's brother Bud is with us. Bud, welcome back for your second time around.
Well, thank you.
Good to have you here. The last time we were together, we talked about music here in central Minnesota and Little Falls, and we heard some great stories, Les, and you didn't have a chance to share any of your stories, but you know, you've always been involved in music. You're musically inclined, aren't you?
Sort of.
Okay. Tell us about your involvement with music.
Well, I didn't really play out any place. I had a harmonica when I was in high school, but one of the orchestras that I remember was a Vern Larson orchestra. And I don't remember how many played in there, probably about 6, 7 of them.
Yeah, it was pretty good size.
Yeah, sounds great.
They had because Bozer, he played the piano, I think. And,
Lloyd Bozer.
Lloyd.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Lloyd.
Okay.
And then there was Bobpacker, he played the horn and the bass. And I think Wally Wast
Was with them, yeah.
He played with them.
They didn't play that often, did they?
No, they
was
had
sort of a hobby with
They
those
played
guys.
like in supper clubs and stuff, the bigger places.
Yeah. I think they had about 7 in that.
Yeah, that was quite a group there. And they used to draw crowds when they had things, and then they played a lot of benefits, like at the school and for different things. But otherwise, I think the one I remember the most is the Night Owls.
Yeah.
And that was
Wally's.
Wally's.
Bud played for him. I guess I played for him.
Yeah,
too.
I played with him for 10 years.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Yeah. And then he passed away, and then his son Kevin and his wife, they still play at dances. They were at the ballroom here a few weeks ago in Little Falls.
So they're carrying on the name.
Yes,
Good, good. And let's talk about some of those facilities. When we were together last time, Hub and Bud had some great stories, but let's talk about some of the places where you guys used to play. And I know one of the names that came up was a name I am not acquainted with whatsoever, Merry-Go-Round.
Oh,
That was my...
Tell me about this.
yeah, I remember.
Where was it?
I remember the
Okay.
merry-go-round. It was on Lindbergh Drive
And
and
about 10th Street.
10th
Okay.
Street. Yeah.
Bingo.
And I was probably 15, 16 years old or somewhere in there, 13 or 14. And the one that was playing there every Saturday night, his name was Walter Plohas. He played the concertina, and
Oh, I remember that guy.
he had a guitar player playing with him, and they could never last out the night. They were both bombed. And so he came over to my dad and he said, would Buddy come over and play guitar with me? He says, I'll pay him a whole $1. Now, we're looking at 1938, where
Yeah.
a dollar meant a lot of money. And my dad says, sure. So he picked me up, and besides getting the $1, probably had a bottle of pop on some of the customers or a candy bar, which was really, really nice. And he'd bring me home after the dance was over, and it went on pretty good for a while. And I ended up the richest kid in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
With the $1.
And once in a while you'd
A
get
lot
a
of the
tip.
parents,
I
you
know.
were richer than a lot of the parents.
Yeah,
in
we played one afternoon and we got an extra quarter.
All right. So describe this place. What was it
Yeah.
like?
It was probably, it was a small dance hall with a 3-2, like a 3-2 joint, and probably hamburgers. And it was just not very big. And I
Was
think
there
the
room to-
foundation is still there.
What
But,
is?
Yeah, it's down on, if you go up to 10th Street and look to your right, there's all kinds of woods in there, and it's all grown over now. So, but I had asked some of the people at the warehouse if anybody heard of the merry-go-round. Nobody had, except Hubert. He came
Yeah.
to my defense.
Yeah.
What, wasn't it painted green, the building?
I can't
I
remember.
remember
no.
it was painted green,
Yeah.
because we stopped there on the way to Lindbergh Park.
Uh-huh.
Well, the only time I was there was, I forgot Pulhas, you were playing with him,
Yeah,
but you had to go there and play alone. So Dad said, you go along and chaperone him. I'm like 9 years old, chaperoning my older brother. But I was a little afraid. The inside was not decorated too well.
No, it was
You know, it looked like a place you could throw a beer bottle
like
against
a
the wall
joint.
and let it smash.
Yeah, you would call it a joint.
Yeah, it was a little joint.
Yeah.
So you said the foundation is still there. So what happened to it?
I suppose it burned down or they tore it down.
Okay.
Yeah, no use for it now.
Well, there's a Kalahar, somebody built a house
Right across the street.
Yeah, well, I thought it was on the same side of the street.
No, that's across the street.
Well, what side of the street was it on? On the river side or the other side?
No,
the other
it was
side.
on, not the riverside, the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
That's where Kalahar lived.
and on this side
Yeah,
of 10th
On the other
Street.
side, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now somebody here at one time mentioned the 34th Club.
Yeah.
What was that? Where was it?
Was on 371 going to Brainerd. It was, we were talking about that just a little bit ago. It was owned by Smokey Newman. And I think just about everybody in town back in those days knows Smokey. He had a restaurant downtown
Yeah.
next to the theater,
I think it was
Falls
where
Theater.
KLTF Tower is.
That's
wasn't
just
it?
about where
Right?
it is.
About
Yeah.
there?
But
Yeah.
KLTF, yeah.
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 Remember the
uh,
teepees were out there too?
The
Oh,
war,
yeah.
the war had been
Hallberg.
over, and
Hallberg had those.
they named it the 34th Club for the division, 34th Division that came back from
The
the
Red
war.
Bull Division.
It was the Red Bull, and a person by the name of Bill Arndt, and I think everybody that through baseball, Bill was our catcher, and his job was managing the 34th Club for Smokey Newman, and it went on for quite a while.
Was this the same as the 371 Club?
No, that's
No.
a different.
That was
one.
different.
That's
That-
different. Yeah.
That
Okay.
was in that same area, wasn't it? Wasn't that called the 371?
Yeah.
No.
Didn't the
Monlock had the
Monlocks.
trading post there.
yeah
Yeah. Yeah. No, this was
Joel.
this was
Joel,
different. It was it stayed there until it burned down.
Because my father actually worked at the 371 Club. He had two jobs at the same time. He got married, he moves off the farm, he comes to Little Falls, and he gets a job working for Joe. And there was the gas station there apparently in front of the 371 Club.
Yeah.
Dad would pump gas, and then he'd have to run back and bartend also at the same time. If somebody went to the bar, he'd have to go there, pour him a drink, come back and run the gas station too.
Well, that was more of an eating place, wasn't it? Because chicken. I'm trying to think of what her name was. God.
You talking about the 34th Club?
No, the 371.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because the younger group hung out up there.
Uh-huh.
Oh gosh, I'll think of the name.
So what was the 34th Club like?
Well,
You played there?
yes, not a lot, but he had some bands out of St. Cloud. In fact, they had a bar business. Well, we can go back to most of them had bought a federal license for selling liquor. And until our new Governor Youngdahl came in, and he stopped that. And so all they could do is sell setups. And so then it kind of hurt the bar business. And
So that's what happened to a lot of our small 3-2 bars and a lot of the
Right.
bars in the
Yeah.
area, was because of the new governor?
right, that was 1946. No,
Yeah, it was right after
No,
the war, yeah.
after, no, it was 46 or 48, I think, whenever the election was. But anyway, that kind of put the kibosh on a lot of these smaller places. There was Al's Friendly Tavern, that was on the south side of town.
Was it a friendly place?
Very friendly.
Okay.
You probably know Roger Thielen.
Yes.
Yeah, that was his father.
Okay.
And we played there, and we worked for him, and
They lived next door to us.
then they had the Homestead, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was on 371 too.
That's the one, not 371 Club, the Homestead. That was the
Yeah.
one I was
Yeah.
thinking.
And that was a nice eating place and about the same thing. And there were all this nice little nightclubs right around Little Falls.
And they were just torn down, you think?
Well, I don't know.
I think
They're not
they
there
moved
anymore.
that.
No, they're not there.
Homestead.
Well, I can tell you about the 34th Club. My sister Mary was playing with the band out of St. Cloud. She was playing piano, and the drummer was Les Fea, not Les, or one of the Fea boys was and he had a beautiful set of drums. And they were playing like Friday night and Saturday night. Well, Friday night they left everything set up, and Friday night it burnt down.
Oh,
His beautiful drum set.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was Les Fea. It's his brother was Ole Fea, played one of the most beautiful tenor sax players I've ever heard in my life. And they did a lot at the Al's Friendly Tavern too. And,
You know,
it was nice, good music.
Excuse me, but you know when Monlock had that trading post, he had a great big sign on the front that says Monlock's Trading Post. Well, when the troops came here from New York on the train, and the train went right past there, and the soldiers, they never knew anything about Minnesota, and they wanted to know if the Indians were still hostile around here, because they saw that trading post.
So that was like when our 47 Division was activated in the Korean War. We went down to Alabama, and the fillers all came from out east. And if I was asked once, I was asked 1,000, how'd you get along with the Indians up there? I said, I've never seen one. Oh, come on, our history book said they're all over Minnesota. You know, I said, yeah, they have their places, but no, we never had any of them that lived in town that I remember.
But you know, Patty Nolan, he had a little
there's
shack
one,
up there by the teepees.
That's the guy with that.
And
Yeah.
boy, I tell you, that was, you'd never dare go in there thinking you'd maybe not come out alive again.
so it was a bar?
Yeah, it was a little bar.
It was a
Was
tough
it-
bar?
Wasn't that the Wigwams?
No, well, the
that
wigwams
wasn't it.
were next
teepees
door.
were the
okay.
Was the,
wigwams.
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think the building was more than about 20 by 20, and they were shaking dice and gambling in there.
So it was a tough place to go.
Yeah, he was from Randall.
Patty
And then-
was Patty from Randall?
Huh?
Patty Nolan, you're talking about?
Yeah.
Was he from Randall?
Yeah, and then he kind of was a semi-professional wrestler.
Wrestler, yeah.
Yeah. But one time he came in the barber shop, this was about 1946 or 47, he says, anybody want to buy a watch? And he pulled up and he had about 20 watches.
Oh, he was a hustler.
Nothing inside his coat, too?
No, he says, I got TVs in the car and everything, but nobody dare buy one.
We would have the county fair, and they would have a wrestling people. They'd wrestle anybody out of the audience, and Patty Nolan was always wrestling. And he wasn't a very big guy.
No,
but
no,
I think he
he was-
got in with these guys, and they just promoted these big fights, and
Yeah.
and he was going to fight the big Swede, and this guy was twice his size. And the big Swede happened to walk by the gas station one day, and I went out and I talked to him, and we talked for a while, and he started showing me different holes, and he had me down on the ground where he says, I got both hands free. What can you move? I says, my tongue. He said, I can grab that. He was that good. So now that night he had to fight Patty, and the big Swede got me in free. So I got in free, and I'm ringside, and Patty Nolan just wipes him out. And he's on the ground in the ring, And he looks at me, and he's got that look on his face. This kid thinks I'm such a hero, and I could take this Patty Nolan and take him apart. But it was all fixed that Patty would win.
Yeah.
So there was a rematch. But then there was the carnivals. That was other than they were the carnival part of the county fair, but they would also be a carnival that would come, say, in July or something, and they had these same wrestlers, and that was a big attraction. Still a big attraction in Morrison County.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I remember my dad with his 3 hairs running across his head. He called me up one time, and he said, "You cut your boy's hair, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, Dad, I do." Why? He said, "Well," he said, "do you know the price of the barber shop now?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I'm not going to pay that price." He said, "From now on, you are my barber." But if he had any little hairs on his ears, you got to come right now. I said, "Dad, I'm in the middle of a birthday party. You got to come over right now." So in anticipation one time, I went to his house. And he opened the door. He said, "Well, what do you want?" I said, "Oh, I came to cut your hair." "No, not tonight," he said. I said, "Why not?" "Wrestling on TV." So I said, "Well, I'm not going to come back again." So my mother said, "Well, why don't we just set him up in the kitchen and he can look through the dining room and he can see the TV in there." So I'm cutting hair and the 3 of us are talking and the TV is on and I forgot all about the thing. And all of a sudden, I had the bib on him and hair flying, and he ran into that TV set and grabbed that TV set. "Kill that! Kill that! So. It was funny. My mother and I just about, the hair was flying all the way through the dining room. He was watching that thing and talking to us, but it was funny.
Was that Monday nights, Friday nights? Do you remember?
No, I don't know.
It was a couple nights a week, but there was, it might have been Wednesday. I'm not sure. I never followed it much. After talking to the big suite, I knew it was all a fake. Actually, we had a program in high school, and they had a wrestler up there and told us that it was all fake, and you know how they pull their punches and all that sort of thing. And I never really got interested in a sport that
But Patty, he was a big
was
celebrity.
choreographed.
Yeah, he was a big celebrity around the area.
What a hustler.
Everybody knew Patty.
That was Mrs. Yasgur that was running that chicken shack, and what was the name of that? Not the 34 Club, the other one.
The Homestead.
The Homestead, yeah. Mrs. Yasgur. I don't know if she owned it, but she was managing it.
The same Mrs. Yasgur that had the West Side Cafe?
No, that would have been a different Yasgur.
Okay.
Yeah.
She had children that were my age. One of them was a year ahead of us in school.
Leona.
Leona was a couple years behind us.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was a real hangout for us young people. But the 34th Club, all the guys that came out of the service, boy, they hung out there every Saturday night. That place was loaded with GIs that had come home. And I think a lot of marriage matches were made at that 34th Club.
I believe that.
Yeah, that was really a hustling place.
It was like 37 acres. I know the Night Owls played over there. Yeah.
I don't even remember being inside. It was like a taboo for us younger people to go in there. That was more there. You go to your other place, your chicken shack. Yeah.
And one of the things I remembered, you talk about wrestling in a bar, and this just came to me, and maybe some of you guys remember this, probably in the 70s or 80s at the West Side Bar, they had a full-grown bear, and you could wrestle the bear. It had a muzzle on, of course, on its mouth, and I'm sure it was declawed. And of course, now you got to figure somebody's been in the bar probably for about 2-3 hours. They're drinking, and now they're getting more self-assured that I could wrestle that bear. It was the greatest form of entertainment. Obviously, people in animal protection, it probably didn't go over for very long. But you had some of the really big guys in the bar who had been there for quite a few hours and decided, I've had enough to drink now, I'm going to take on the bear. You cannot beat a bear, I found out. This bear would take on some of the biggest people in Little Falls and be like, just right out of something you'd see in a movie.
Yeah.
Knock this guy over or whatever, and the bear would pin him, he'd sit on top of him or whatever. It was great entertainment, but I remember that at the West Side Bar a couple of different times. Oh, there's something you don't see in the bar anymore.
No, I guess not.
Speaking of the bear, my son Jeff hunted out by Lake Alec, and he took me to his hunting spot. It was kind of up on the hill off of that the road that goes by the lake, and there was this turf with pieces about this big were just rolled over, just about that big. And I said, "What is going on there?" And he said, oh, the bears are looking for grub worms. They just take that turf and, that's how strong they are. Woo, it was just unreal. And there'd be a whole area just ripped up, and they would pick the grub worms.
Wow.
They could just pick up that turf and just rip it out. Pieces that big, or maybe even twice the size.
But another place, Slim Jim from Minneapolis, and the Vagabond Kid, that was his brother, and they played a lot out at Pierce. And then just south of Cushing, where Elk Creek is, there used to be a beer joint there, and they'd play up there. But I think Hub mentioned once before, if you were from Little Falls and you went out to Pierce, you better not ask some woman to dance, because you probably get thrown right out of the place.
No, I didn't say that.
But you don't belong there.
Yeah. Well, I had a different. We played baseball against Piers, and they were always a great rival. But once the game was over, you were all buddies. But and all these kids were bussed in. So we both had a lot of friends from Piers.
Oh, yeah.
And if I went into that Red's bar in Piers, there was no way I could buy a drink. No way. Everybody was, hey, Hub's here.
Yeah.
They were all so friendly.
Red's place.
Yeah, Red. Yeah.
When we were together last time, Seabuck came up quite often, the Seabuck building. There was a pool hall there also, and a music store.
At one point, yes, I could tell you a little story about the music store when the music store folded up, but the door was open, and there was this big desk in there with all kinds of novelties in there. And Hub and I had snooped in there all the time, and we found a box of 22 blank shells. So we took them home, and we were going to fool the neighbor kids about something. And my dad, the only gun we had in the house was a little 22 caliber pistol, which Pa confiscated from one of his nephews. Well, Hub still has it.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I told Hub, now you stand. We went, well, this is when the West Side ballpark was still there, and we only lived right kitty corner from that. And that's where all the kids were playing, and a whole bunch of kids were out there, and I said, let's put on a show. So Hub stood, maybe from here to the wall with me, and I had this 22 pistol loaded with the blanks. And I says, now you hold out this twig, and when I shoot, you drop it. And all the kids thought that, boy, is he a crack shot. Yeah, and his Hub got guts over there holding. We should have put an apple on your head.
Yeah,
we didn't.
Yeah, we weren't that sophisticated.
Yeah.
That is one thing I remember about that building, and they had all kinds of different things in there, and it was just for anybody could take.
Wow.
That
this-
22, when I was in the service, I was a small arms repairman, and I brought it out, and I had to have a part made. So the thing works, and I still have that box of 22 shells. There's still some left. We'll have to put on that act sometime for the great grandchildren.
This was so funny.
But I don't think in those days anybody knew anything about blanks.
No,
That
this
wasn't
was
even
back-
a word in the vocabulary. of
We're
people
looking in
those
the
days.
30s, late 30s,
I
probably.
bet mouths fell open and.
Oh boy, they thought we were
Well,
Yeah.
something special. Yeah.
Les, I know you've in the past have mentioned an establishment called the White Front Cafe.
Yeah.
What was it? Where was it?
There's a saddle shop in there now.
Oh, over there
Yeah.
on Broadway.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the bartender was Bumpy Chilquist.
Oh,
I
gee.
remember.
And he lived behind the Victor Clothing Company.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was on that Bumpy Chilquist.
and the owner was Leo Welters.
Okay.
And
Who, Bud?
Leo Welters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
then owned
Okay.
37 acres.
Yes.
Too.
But anyway, back in about 1946, when a lot of the boys were coming home from service, he gave a case of beer to everyone that came home on the house.
Yeah.
He was quite a wonderful guy. And then he had
he
bought
was-
the 37 acres.
He was another Cliff Buck.
Yeah, he
He
was.
was.
He'd
Just
give
a
everything
kind
away.
man.
Yeah.
And his
see-
son was nice too.
We lived where the jail is now, and
Yep.
Mrs. Welter, she came walking home with the money, because they lived about the second block south on 3rd, and this guy jumped out of the hedge there and grabbed her and knocked her down, and it was real warm. We could hear her screaming because we were only a half block away. And then they ran down to the corner, and the getaway car was parked right there, and Con Schumacher lived in there where Howers lived. And he was on the porch sleeping, and he ran out, and he jumped on the running board of that car.
Was he a
But then when they
conservation
sped
officer?
him-
He was game warden then already?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Then when they drove away, then he jumped off, but he knew who it was, and then they caught the guys.
Wow.
I
One
remember
of
that.
them was Ted Grist.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He was the one that escaped from
I
jail,
won't mention the driver because too many people would know him.
That was your brother, wasn't it?
Yeah, he didn't know how to drive. Yeah, but they went to St. Cloud Reformatory. But that was a robbery right there.
Right by your house? Right
Yeah,
by your house,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, about a half a block.
Yeah, about a half block away.
Les, at the beginning of our program, beginning of our conversation, you mentioned a gentleman by the name of Packer. Bobpacker?
Bobpacker.
Bobpacker. And I know you've got a great story on a funeral.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And usually funerals aren't funny, but this one is a great. It was what was it was a bass funeral.
He had an electric shop right across from the bakery, and that Morrow, the veterinarian, he was on the corner, Doc Morrow, and they went to play a dance job out by Pierce, and somehow the trailer, they had the bass tied on the top, and then the trailer unhooked and it rolled over in a ditch and flattened that thing out. So then they had a funeral in there, in the electric shop, and they had a table and they had all candles around there.
Around the
And
bass.
they had a prayer service
Yeah.
with that bass. I remember that. I remember Wally Gloss was there, and I was there, and Bob and Vern Larson, and there was a lady that played the accordion, and she lived in St. Cloud. I went to visit her a few years ago, but she's passed away now. I remember her name. But yeah, that was a funeral for the bass.
Bud, there was a place called Frog Pond.
What on the west side, when we used to have our ballpark, it's where all them snowplows are now.
Okay.
That was our playground, and right across the street from on Limburg Drive was a spring-fed pond, and the thing went like down into a ditch. It was so when you're down below, you couldn't see what was going on up above. But us kids, there was kind of a playground for most of us kids. The frog pond was here, and then they had the bums camp. There were a lot of people riding the rails in those days. And then the paper mill was over here, and then that canal was in between. Well, we were down playing. We were just catching frogs, and they weren't them little ones. They were great big frogs,
green striped
great big
ones, yeah.
green striped frogs. And we tap them on the head and kind of knock them out, play with them for a while, and they'd come to, and we'd throw them back in through the pond.
Now, keep your thought here, but I've never tapped a frog in the head before. You could actually knock it out that
Yeah,
way?
we did, remember?
Yeah,
We used just
well,
to tap them, just to show how many we could catch. I think it was
Okay.
probably like a contest. See who could have an old coffee can full of how many frogs. Well, anyway, I can't remember who I was down there with, but we had heard this noise kind of rumbling up on Limburg Drive. So we went and snuck up and to see what was going on. And here it was the cavalry. I don't know how many horses, but I guess there was probably close to 100. A whole unit of them, all dressed up in their cavalry uniforms. What reminded me of this just a little while ago, because I watched MASH a lot. And Colonel Potter was Sophie, his horse Sophie, somebody had given to him, and he come out dressed in his cavalry uniform, and I thought, well, holy man, I remember that in life when they really did have the cavalry, and they were marching into Little Falls like they came from Limburg Park, and they were going north, and I thought that was quite a deal.
I bet.
And Lester said you remember them too.
Yeah, they came right through town. But you know, the thing of it was they didn't have nothing to ride in, and they were pulling these big cannons with the horses.
Right.
And see, the Camp Ripley originally was down at Lake City by Lake Pepin. And then they didn't have enough land, so then they had to move everything up to Camp Ripley, and that's when them guys came. But you know, they had to walk.
They
the
walked
whole way.
from Lake Pepin,
Yeah.
southern Minnesota.
Yeah, with the horses and the cannons and everything. Yeah.
That was quite an ordeal. That must have been in about the late 30s or
35,
early.
38,
yeah,
something like that.
somewhere about it.
So they must have taken the West River Road then,
Yeah.
rather than Highway 10.
Too bad we didn't take some pictures. Or
Yeah, well, it's just, yeah,
could
well, who had a
afford- who could
camera
afford a
back then?
camera?
Yeah, you know, you couldn't afford the film for it.
No, no.
And the
Somebody-
camera, if there was a
Remember
camera
you
in the
could-
family, that was treasured by the folks.
Yeah.
The big
because-
square one.
Yep, you didn't,
But when they were marching along, you could hear all that clinking
Yep.
noise of the horses
that.
and,
yeah.
Yeah.
and everything. Yeah.
Now, there was a mock war in Little Falls at one time,
Prior to World War II.
Yeah.
prior to World War II.
Yeah, the
So
Reds
what was
and the
this,
Blues.
training, or what
Yeah.
was,
It
what was the story on this?
I think they knew pretty much that they were going to go to war. And they were National Guard, weren't they?
Yeah, they were in Swanville, the camp, and Pierce, and behind St. Mary's Church, and out by Randall, they had all the, because I remember they had boxcars at Camp Ripley, and they were just the boxcar was all full of bread, loaves
Bread?
of bread. Yeah,
okay.
to feed all them.
Okay.
Yeah,
I remember there was three guys with a 30 caliber machine gun stationed right on the edge of the bridge. That was their playing. What kind of war games they played? That's what they were doing, playing war games. And actually, these guys came from all over.
Yeah,
Actually,
they
a
were-
guy like Rush Ledbetter was in the service, and
Yeah.
he met his wife from
Yeah.
here, and he married her.
So this happened for one day over
no,
a period?
no,
Oh, no.
gee, that thing went on
all
months.
summer.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
seemed like it was all summer. They,
And life just went on,
well, we just, you know,
you worked around it?
Yeah.
That's right.
So no one was ever captured or detained
we
or?
have, no, we have no idea who won or whose side was side.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't say anything.
Sure.
They would. They were polite. They were polite to people, and we'd stand and talk to them. I know it was a 30 caliber water-cooled machine gun. I remember that because that was what they had in those days. And then that whole division was activated in 40 before the war started.
Yeah.
Let's go back to some music. A lot of shows came to town.
Oh, back up just the Frogtown. Now,
Okay.
Bud's group was a little more friendly than we were. We would be playing ball across the road, and in about August, there would be so many frogs down there that you couldn't hear yourself think. And every time okay, this is it. It's war on the frogs, and we'd go over there and just club the crap out of those poor things. I mean,
Oh, you didn't just tap them on your head.
we got rid of them.
Okay.
Yeah, the choir got smaller when we left. It was the frog war. Okay, guys, it's a frog. Everybody get a big stick or a baseball bat, and we'd go down there. Well, you could only hit what you could reach out because we didn't walk into that swamp. And that was a natural place for the water to accumulate because it came off the railroad tracks, and then it was downhill from Lindbergh Drive, so everything accumulated in that place.
And then I think it was spring fed too, because
sure it was.
because
Yeah,
even in
because it was
the
always-
hot summer, it was always
Yeah.
water in there.
Yeah, yeah. But that was,
Of course, that was on the west side, Les, so you never ventured over there.
No, but I think the statute of limitations has run out for killing your frogs.
yeah. Oh, I suppose they multiplied during the
Oh,
summer.
sure.
And by the middle of August, they were all full grown and just croaking down. You couldn't hear yourself think. It was just,
So could you notice the difference in sound the next night after you guys
oh,
went
yeah,
over there?
we diminished the population.
Okay.
There was nothing around to eat. No enemies for them. There were so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
If Schumacher would have got a hold of them, these guys would have been in jail.
Schumacher, when Schumacher was anywhere in the area, the word got out and we'd all disappear. Because he was tough on us kids.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was tough.
Yeah.
You were going to say something, Bud?
No, I was just going to say, tell another, getting back to music. I was probably a sophomore in high school. Hub will remember this one. And over the loudspeaker, it said, Michael Zivoloski, please report to the principal. And me, a little timid kid, and what in the world did I do that I have to go report to the principal? And by the name of Joe Vicker, you guys must
Yeah.
remember him.
Yeah, he
and
was the
and
principal.
A.J. Mischie was the superintendent at that point. So I timidly went over to the principal's office, and I said, told him my name, and I says, what did you want me for? And he says, would you and Hub entertain at halftime at was it basketball?
It was a basketball
game, a tournament, or
regional
something.
tournament game in Little Falls.
So Hub and I had to entertain the whole halftime, and everybody was just looking for things, there was no television and, very little radio. And when there was something live entertainment, we were very, very popular about that.
They were very good attentive audience.
Yeah.
And we stood on the jump circle in the
Yeah.
middle of the basketball court.
Yeah.
And I know when we walked off, I said, Bud, this is ridiculous for us to be singing country western
I
at the
know.
halftime of a basketball game. I said, we're not going to do this anymore. And I don't think we ever did.
No, not at
those
school.
public appearances anymore.
I think the next time I did it alone.
Yeah, and I went my way too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God.
But that was really something.
There was the WLS Barn Dance that came to town.
Well, yeah, WLS was one of the favorite stations. It was kind of a country western station
Radio.
back then.
Yeah.
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 And
they were a full power station like CCO,
yeah.
so you could pick them up at night.
Oh, yeah.
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 well, this lady came to town, and I don't know who sponsored it, but anyway, she was looking for talent to put on a WLS Barn Dance show would be at the high school, the old high school, the one that's torn down now. So they started picking people, and Hub and I were on. We were who? The Blue Boys.
I think,
we were
yeah.
the Blue Boys, and there were characters in this show. There was a couple called Ludabelle and Scotty. It was a man and a wife, or a boy and a girl that sang duets. And they had a comedian named Uncle Ezra, and he was played by Bud Wrenches. And a lot of people probably remember, the old folks would probably remember him from the West Side Creamery. Him and his brother ran the creamery. It's still where this...
Anderson is
yeah,
now,
where
yeah.
Anderson Processing is. And Bud is uncle to Paul Crowder's wife.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she was a Wrenches. So we get to talk about that every once in a while. Well, the place was full on Saturday night, so they were going to put a program on Sunday. So all of us thought we were, auditioning for something, and maybe you make a few bucks for our talents and stuff. So we put this show on Sunday to another full house. And what did we get out of it? Coffee and donuts. I think this lady vamoosed with most of the profit.
Oh,
or
she
all
took
of it,
the money and
oh,
she
yeah.
found all the local
Yeah,
entertainment.
And
used their
it
name.
was a very good program because there was a lot of talent back in those days.
Yeah.
I think there were two girls, the Primusburger girls.
from
Yeah.
Royalton.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Elmer Gertz's wife was
really?
was one of, yeah.
Oh,
so
I
she
didn't-
got to end up being a good friend of ours, and there was really, really good talents.
Well, it
But
wasn't.
that's about how it ended up. We went up down at the cafeteria and had coffee and donuts, and everybody disappeared
Yeah, yeah.
with the money.
And the money went, yeah.
So
But
since-
the idea then was the regular cast on these radio shows, you don't see them, you
No.
just hear them. So they would go out with these groups and they would have costumes and things, they would bring stuff along. They would audition the local talent, and then like Bud and I auditioned, they said, oh, you're going to be the Blue Boys. Well, they were two guys sang on the regular
Okay, on the
radio
regular show.
and who knew the difference? Now, I'm like 7, 8 years old, and when we auditioned and they said, you got the part, I said, yeah, I figured we made big time.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was going to be a little dinky program at home, and that I thought we were going to be working on the radio station. We had made it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was counting my wage already.
Yeah.
7 or 8 years old.
Oh, that was funny, but the characters were really good, and a lot of them were fairly close to the originals. And this Uncle Ezra, played by Bud Wrenches, you could swear it was the same person over the radio. He was very, very good.
He was talented.
So with you guys playing in bands over the years, did you ever not get paid and you were supposed to get paid? The owner says, oh, I don't have the bucks, or never happened? Most people were pretty good?
No, it only happened once to me. I was playing with Erhard Schmidt at the time.
Oh, Earhart, that was
Yeah.
my wife's cousin.
He was?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, anyway, he had this job. I don't know exactly where it was, but anyway, we went out and played, and only had a few people at the dance. And I thought we might as well quit early and get paid for it. And he tells all of us it was a commission job.
The amount of people
we got
there.
about $1 or $2 a piece for traveling. I don't know how far, but I told them, next time if you want to take these, you pay us scale. We were all in the union at that point.
Okay.
And I said, you pay us union scale or we're not going.
Yeah.
And he tried to fill his job by, well, any dance hall would take a band on commission.
Yeah.
Sure.
Rather than you pay, when you're hired, you union scale plus $5. That was probably the going rate at that point. $5 for the manager for gas.
You have to figure in those days, every place on Saturday night had an orchestra, so there was a
Yes.
lot of competition for the customers. You know, and depending on if you were a good band, you drew well, whether you
Yes.
played in Genola or Piers
Yeah,
or wherever.
I know.
Yeah, the Night Owls were a good example. That was always,
Yeah.
everybody followed them.
But when I played with Wally, I was there about 10 years with him. He would, if it was a strange place, he would have a contract signed.
Yeah.
And they honored that contract no matter how many people showed up.
Okay.
Which he was very, very good band director. He wrote all his own arrangements, and we could play for just about anybody. Between the old time, little bit country western, but mostly modern. Would be like the hit parade,
Sure.
hit parade songs.
Dancing was very popular in those
Yeah.
days.
Yes.
You know, that's
Gary,
where
do you
met the
remember the
girls.
Swayzer brothers from out by Pierce?
Yep. Up by Harding.
By Harding?
Yeah.
Yeah. They played a lot of different joints around different places.
They were good.
Yeah.
They were very, very
Lonnie,
good.
wasn't it? Was it Lonnie?
Yeah, I believe it was.
Lonnie and
His brother.
yeah,
And his brother, yeah.
and his brother.
That was a
the
good
only-
answer.
The only recollection I have of Erhard Schmidt, he came to our house one time and he walked, I was sitting in the living room and he walked right by and the telephone was in the dining room and it was that stand-up one, you know, like you talked it with the short cord. And he got on the phone and I don't know, he gave the operator a number and whoever answered, he said, "This is Erhard Schmidt talking." And I, for whatever reason, you know, who cares? We're rolling on the floor and he's playing Mr. Big Shot like everybody in the world should know him. This is Erhard Schmidt talking. That's my only memory of him.
Oh, yeah.
I never played with his band. And
No, but Erhard had that German,
oh yeah,
real
yeah.
German
If you-
talk.
If you
How
heard,
are
yeah.
you?
Well, I can tell with the name alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you heard him once, he wouldn't have to tell you his name.
He was
No.
he was as loud as our dad was.
Yeah.
He
That
passed
voice.
away quite a few years
Yeah,
ago.
he did.
Yeah, he died pretty young, Erhard.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Hub and Bud, you guys didn't have to go very far for music. Obviously, we've talked about you had the family band, but your dad had a jam session right at the
Oh,
house too.
yeah.
What was this like?
Well, to me, it seemed like every Sunday afternoon was the time anybody that played a guitar or a stringed instrument or anything were welcome to come over to our house. They'd move all the furniture out of the living room, and the guys would sit in that big circle. And of course, there was a keg of beer in the kitchen that was set up, and you just, you know, pour the little beer. And
It was a pony.
a pony, yeah, a pony of beer.
That's what they
yeah.
call that little
And
keg.
that was a must with
Pony
my
of
dad. You
beer.
know, it was, well, we're gonna have, we're gonna do this. Well, where do we put the beer? You know, the beer had to be there, right? With him. But I never played an instrument. You probably played with them.
Yeah, well, my mother's brother, Uncle Mike, was a very good guitar player and mandolin. And a friend of his, Abish Pahopia.
Yeah,
Remember Abish?
Yes, Abish. That's a name.
There were two that I remember that would
Yeah.
come over. And he was a ham, and he played violin. Mom played piano. Mary played accordion, and I played guitar and trumpets once in a while, and that was it.
Yeah.
And
Well, the only thing I could do, they'd roll back the rug and I would jig. I have no idea what jigging meant, but they thought I was really good at it. And it was just like pushing one foot in front of the other and then let me get out of here and go play baseball. But yeah, but Uncle Mike, he never played in the band, did he?
no, he did
And neither did Abish.
No, they did it for their own entertainment and for parties. And
Okay.
stuff
And that
like
was why that was their way of participating
Yeah.
with an audience. Was they'd come over, and it seemed like it was every Sunday, but I'm sure it wasn't. Maybe
No.
once a month or so.
No,
But
off
yeah,
and on,
I don't know if Mike ever bought any of the pony of beer. He was pretty tight.
But back then, people were looking for entertainment, live entertainment. You didn't have television, and movies weren't bad. We were cheap enough. But I remember one point, my dad says, we're all going over to the Royal Cafe. And I said, for what? He said, they've got a Hawaiian orchestra playing. It used to be owned by Harold Meschke.
Yeah.
And it was a hamburger place, probably a 3-2 beer, but it was a very, very nice place and a good eating place. And they had this little 3-piece Hawaiian band playing in that back room. Do you remember that at all?
No, I don't remember that.
But anyway, we sat and listened to it for the whole night, and people just enjoyed, because you never heard much of Hawaiian music.
That was before Tiny Bubbles, right?
Yeah, before Tiny Bubbles.
Bud, was that about the time that you guys ended up with a Hawaiian guitar? Because that was the only one I could
Well,
play
yeah,
at that
and
bar.
guess what?
Yeah.
One of the guys was a teacher for Hawaiian guitar music, and Pa says, buddy, you're going to go learn to play the Hawaiian guitar, because I played the Spanish guitar. And so I did. I took a few lessons, and I hated it. I says, you put a little bar on your guitar to raise the strings up, so you
Instead
could
of your
use this
fingers,
roller
yeah.
and string finger. I said, give me my old guitar back, and that's what I did. I kind of gave up on it.
That was the only instrument I could play, because I was really in. You just moved the bar and you changed chords, because I never could get my
Yeah.
fingers around the key.
See,
You know, old Art Wright, he was worked at the water plant, and he played the banjo.
very good.
But I don't know who ever played with.
My dad.
Oh, did he?
Oh, yes. He was probably one of those that came to that jam session, too.
Yeah.
He lived over there by the park on the west
He
side.
wanted to teach me how to play, and I never took advantage
He was a
of it.
very good banjo player.
But I have to tell you a funny story about Art. His son-in-law was Raynald Lightball.
Yep.
And when he got out of the service, him and his brother, they started a moving business. And Art says, I'm going to have some fun with my son-in-law. So he calls him up and he said, I see your ad in the paper, he said, and you said you move anything. And he says, yeah. He said, we move anything. Well, he said, my bowels haven't moved for a week. Can you help me? He said, who is it? Who is it? He said, and Art hung up on him.
You guys entertained in Staples. There's a turkey story, isn't there?
Oh, geez. Yeah, that was me. My sister had some guy, I think he was the music director at the school in Staples, and they had a railroad appreciation day. Staples was the turnaround point for the railroad. They had the roundhouse there.
Roundhouse, yeah.
And so the city was an appreciation, and somehow I ended up being the master of ceremony at this place. It was like a weekend, or at least one full day of all kinds of things going on. And I was scheduled to get there about 6 o'clock, and the show would be on at 6:30. And so we didn't get there, but it had rained all day, and these people were all inside. There was a plan for picnic and everything. And when I showed up, the guy said, "Oh, thank goodness you're here." He said, "They're all waiting because they're giving away prizes and everything, and nobody wants to go home until the show is over." So he said, "That's a pretty ugly audience." He said, "But the school band is going to be sitting down on your left. Play to them." So, okay, got up and I was doing my thing, and I'm playing to this, and sometimes you get the feeling of an audience. It's something that's
They weren't with you.
Yeah, and it was just pulling me to go look at the rest of that audience, because they said, "We're here too," you know. So I really captured that audience, and we had a great time, and they were real happy with that. Well, he calls again about a month later, and he said, "We're going to have a Farmer Appreciation Day." And I said, "I don't do farmer, no. I don't do country western. They won't know the characters that I'm doing. Get somebody else." And I didn't hear from him about a day before the show. He said, "I couldn't find anybody." He never looked. So I go there knowing I'm going to die, because I could not do what that audience wanted. And I told you about us going to the Ripley Theater and sitting in with all the farm people on Saturday night. I knew what they liked, you know, but I couldn't change my act. I got one day notice, and I could have called Bud and said, "Let's do country western." So I'm up on stage singing, and there's a live turkey on each side of me. They're in a gunny sack with a necktie, and they're singing harmony with, you know. How the heck did I get into something like this? I mean, I went out of that railroad thing thinking, boy, I'm Frank Sinatra. I came out of this one thinking I was nobody, you know. I said, I never want to do that kind of thing again, and I didn't.
But you emceed a show in Long Prairie. and you were pulled over by a cop.
Bud was living over there then, and
Okay.
they had a variety show. So I said, we have to rehearse. So I came there on like a Thursday night, and they had these guys where they would, their heads, their bellies were their head or something. It was,
Yeah, those Mad Hatters, they called them. Yeah.
So these guys were all in these costumes, and they come out on the stage, and you laugh for about 10 seconds. I said, what are they going to do? Well, they're out on the stage. I said, no, you get a 10-second laugh, but they have to do something. I said, and everybody was not prepared for this thing, and I said, I'm going home, you guys. I'll be here Saturday night. I will introduce you. I'll go off stage, and you're going to die by yourself. That was the way this worked out. Anyway, that encouraged them to, figure beyond that first 5-second shock of coming out there looking like whatever they looked like. And it was a very successful show. So going home, I'm feeling real proud of myself. And it was a volunteer thing. And my son Jeff was at the roller rink there in Long Prairie, so we picked him up and we're going up the hill out of town. And Jeff started to laugh. He said, "Dad, you're going to get pulled over." And I looked, what? The local policeman, I was speeding. The local policeman didn't have the lights. He had a flashlight doing this. So I pulled over, and I get a ticket for speeding on this. Because Jeff got a big kick out of that. Dad got picked up for speeding. Well, try as they would to nullify this thing, because here's a guy that puts in all this time and does his volunteer thing, and then he's got to pay a ticket, yeah? And I just said, no, I was breaking the law, and I paid the fine.
And I think I tried to get the money back, but I don't know. I can't remember if I did or not, because
I think they lowered the price. I
just
think
a couple
I paid
of
$20
bucks
instead of $40.
But getting back to these Mad Hatters,
Yeah,
they
Mad
whistled.
Hatters.
They were playing a record was whistling.
Yeah.
Da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-dum.
Yeah.
And their belly button was the whistling.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard
I've
of them?
seen
or
those,
them?
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
And they're very entertaining if they
Yeah.
do it right. And
Well, I remember one of the things we did, because one of the guys that was on the show was a good friend of mine that had contact with the Lutheran home, and I can't remember but I did this.
Vern Myers.
Yeah. It was a kind of an ethnic joke, and so I got up and between acts, and I said, "Now, where are the Catholics?" And I want to see the Catholics raise their hand. Lutherans and Protestants over here, and I said, "Okay, you guys identify each other, because I'm going to tell a joke that is going to aggravate one or the other." And I said, "I might need protection." So they had to wait to the whole next act before I come out and told this ethnic kind of joke, and we had a ball. I went out in the audience, sat on laps, and it really went over. Pretty much an ad-lib show, but it really
Was
went
very
over well.
professional, though.
Yeah, it was. It came off very nicely.
But years ago they had the fireman's ball and the policeman's ball at the ballroom, and those were well attended too.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Very
Didn't you
much.
entertain a fire department in
Oh, yeah. I did
Sauk
that.
Center?
Yeah, thank you for that was our family group, Bud, and Mary,
Okay.
Joanne, and I, and I think Dwayne I don't know if he was with us at that one. Anyway, Noyes, we called him Puss, but what was his?
Bill.
Bill Noyes was a classmate of ours, and he was living in Sauk Center, and he was a fireman.
Oh, yeah.
So when we got there, what we were supposed to do, they were after their drinking and their meal, then they settled in for the dance job, but we would do an hour show before the dance would start. So we're into this thing, so cutie, I made this little thing that looked like a doorbell, and I said to the group, and they had been drinking, were pretty smart aleckish, and I said, "If you guys don't laugh at the jokes, I'm going to push that button, and it's hooked up to the fire alarm, and you're going to be called out for a fire." So I'm telling about 2-3 jokes that die. They die on the vine. Bill Noyes said, "Push the button." The place fell apart, and we just had a ball. I wasn't playing that. We had a drummer then, because I said, that's too much for me to do 2 shows and be the drummer too. So when I left, Bud is marching. What were you? Tell him that part of it.
No, when the Saints go marching
Yeah.
in, we had a little march program, and everybody was dancing around in the circle.
And
So
he
that was a
leading
pretty
and
good
playing
party.
the
Yeah.
trumpet, and I looked back and I said, they won't miss me. I just went home early. Yeah, that was a great show. Push the button.
But back in those days, the people knew how to have fun.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, they
and
did.
they spent time together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They knew how to have fun. That's
You
what-
didn't need computers and
Yeah,
all of this,
yeah.
TV or what. Everybody was just groping for
They look forward
fun.
to your music and stuff.
Oh,
see?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when they had the variety shows, there were a lot of talent. You know?
Yes,
Oh,
there were.
yeah.
Very,
You
very
really
good.
had to audition, and you had to be good enough to get on the show. A lot of people were rejected.
Do you remember if there were other families as talented as the Zivilowski family?
Well, the Zurich sisters from
Royalton.
Royalton.
Yeah.
And the Primesberger family was
yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
Jerry was a very good guitar player, and his two sisters
I don't
were
think
very
there,
good singers. And
I don't think there was any family out there that was as big as ours and,
No.
and could do the variety of things that we did.
Yeah.
Bud and I would sing country western, and the two sisters and I would do trios, and my dad would play the violin, and my dad and mother, tell them about that Italian song.
the what?
I want to go back to,
Well, there was they'd come about once or twice a year. It was called Christy O'Bright.
yeah.
Probably
yeah, we
some
talked
some
about
of the
it.
older
Yeah.
people would probably remember it. They sat up, I think, where the Baptist churches.
Yeah, we talked about
in the-
this at
in
one
that-
of our other meetings, so you
Oh,
don't
we
have
did.
to go
Oh,
into detail.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, this Christy O'Bright and his wife did this song called "Take Me Back to Italy."
Yeah.
Well, my mother and dad used to do it, and all of these little, whenever we'd be doing charity shows.
Yeah.
I can't remember how it all goes, but,
Oh, but
it
you
was
knew it
really
pretty
something.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
Did
Last time, Joanne and I did it at the Lutheran
That's
home.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
And,
yeah. Sister
but-
Joanne. Yeah.
everybody was itching for talent, live talent. And,
They did that well, and it was give a couple lines.
Come on, a couple lines before we
lines.
wrap it up.
Yeah,
Let's see.
I can't get it started.
I can't either.
I want to go back
Back
with
to
me, back to sunny Italy.
Italy, that's where I was long to be, to my old country, back across the sea.
Yeah, and the two would play this thing
Yeah,
back
and
and,
then
forth, and it was a pretty cute ditty.
We're gonna have a baby. We call him Tony. I remember that part
Yeah,
of it.
That
these
was-
go way,
that was
way
very
back, and
entertaining.
lot
That
of-
was the best thing those two did.
Yeah.
Really.
Mother and Dad did that really, really. Too bad we don't have a
Video of that.
video of it
yeah.
and all those things. But back then you had nothing but
No.
Super 8 maybe or
Sure.
straight 8 movies without any
And
sound.
this is something we're going to explore in a future show.
Yeah.
I know we have to wrap it up here in a minute or two, but maybe give a little bit of background of what just happened to you. You took the 8 millimeter film.
What was Chrissy's first name? We called him Christy Christensen. Well, it doesn't matter. We call him Chris.
Yeah.
We talked about him being the projectionist
At the theater.
theater, yeah. But his hobby was 8 millimeter filming. He filmed my younger sister's wedding, and he did a lot of weddings, and he went to Sweden and places like that. Well, he lived next door. He died. His wife gave me all this 8 millimeter stuff, and they're cans about this big, and they're about that high from the floor to go through. And a few of them had the parades and stuff like that. So I had one transferred from 8 millimeter to VCR, and I also DVD. And I made copies for you guys. Chrissy it was a half-hour show, and it was must have been part of a parade. And Chrissy did about 15 minutes of the waterfall, the fall. It didn't make me, so I cut all that out, and each guy has a copy of this, and we're going to go through it and maybe add audio to it, and then play it either
Yeah.
on our show or.
We'll look at it
You
in the
know,
future.
that Christy could speak about 6 different languages. Because
Yeah.
when he delivered milk, he went to the Polish family, to the Swedish one, to the French one, and he had to know how,
Clarence was his first name.
he had
Yeah,
to know
you're
how
right.
to speak their language because they ordered the stuff in French or whatever.
But he was a good musician too. He
Yeah,
played
that's right.
piano
Yeah.
accordion.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christy.
Hey, he's a very talented fellow.
And on that note, we're going to bow out. We're going to do this again, obviously, and we're just going to continue on from here. And Les and Hub and Bud, thank you for being here again. And we're going to tackle some more situations, and who knows what's going to come up in future programs. So thanks for joining us. I'm Gary Block.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah.
Today, it's all, folks.